Tomorrow on with
an elbow, causing teammate Daniel Kickett to retaliate. That sparked an all-in brawl where everything from punches to chairs were thrown. After a delay of more than 30 rejected, 9 of them called off when the remaining 3 Philippines players were fouled off. The CEO of Basketball Australia says the brawl is deeply regretful.
We deeply regret the incident that occurred last night, and our role in it. It's something that, we don't play the game in that spirit. We had our Japan game on Friday night. It was a thrilling match, 1 point loss, but played in incredibly great spirit and conduct by both teams. So last night's game was anything but that. Whilst we, accept our responsibility for our role in last night's incident, what we don't accept is the action whereby fans and officials actually get involved in the fray. And so you've all seen the social media where one of our players, Nathan Sobey, is being assaulted by a fan, and we've got Chris Goulding on a pack of players and officials prone on the court. And then we've also got a fan throwing a chair at one of our players. So we absolutely find that unacceptable. And whilst we'll be waiting for FIBA to provide us with their findings and sanctions, which I'm happy to talk about, that's certainly an issue that we'll be addressing with FIBA. We don't have any breaks and anything like that. But really, it's the mental health of our players we're absolutely concerned about. That's something that the critical issue for us last night was making sure that our players are safely able to leave the arena.
And Australian basketball great Andrew Gaze says it's a disappointing.
It was one of shock. From time to time you see little altercations between players on the court, but when it spills over and you've got the Filipino bench staff coming on and throwing punches, throwing chairs, it was a frightening situation. So it was a real disappointing day and an unfortunate spectacular display of basketball and a great occasion for both Australia and the Philippines. Fortunately in basketball, very rarely do you see these types of altercations. As I said, you from time to time when emotions are running high, you'll get a little bit argy-bargy with the players. But when you've got officials come and getting involved in that type of activity, it's quite frightening. So it's a real black eye for the sport, but hopefully the FIBA will investigate and put in place some sanctions to ensure that there's a significant deterrent from this ever happening again. The incident escalated because of their actions, but first and foremost, I was very disappointed in the coach of the Philippines with some of his comments in a timeout a couple of minutes before the incident, and to sort of paraphrase what he was saying, he was asking his players to be very physical and put some of the Aussies on their arse. So the emotion of the situation, big crowd, the disappointment, I'm sure, for the Filipino team where they weren't doing all that well, about 30 points down. When you've got the head of your team making those types of comments, it can end ugly, which it did on this occasion. So it was a tough night all around, and when you have these bad incidents, it's also an indication on how you respond. And I think that when the Filipino players look back, they regarded what took place, it's another disappointing outcome of what happened. So I don't think that anyone's going to be real proud of what took place, but how you respond to those circumstances is all part of the character test, and I think that they would like to have that moment back. Probably the officials that were involved and players coming in from the bench. One of the strong stances, not just with FIBA, but with the NBA and other associations throughout the world, is that they've come down hard to avoid these types of incidences on players leaving the bench. And fortunately remain locked on their bench, as much as I'm sure they were itching to get out there to help their teammates out. So it remains to be seen, but FIBA will do a thorough investigation, and I suspect that there are going to be some pretty significant penalties handed out. It's really sad. First and foremost, you worry for the safety of Australian players, and certainly a very tough environment for Australia to be having to compete and deal with those circumstances. So but just really sad because, as you mentioned earlier, there's such good news stories going on about the sport in Australia and throughout the world, and unfortunately, a one-off incident like this, which, as I mentioned, is really, really rare, is going to captivate the media and get people's attention, and unfortunately, there's the safety of the sport. Now, we all know that that's not the case, but you now got to sell that message again, which is unfortunate and makes it a real disappointing event and one that makes you pretty sad.
Andrew Gaze there. Time now for a look at the weather. Here is Nate Byrne.
G'day, Joe. Yesterday,